Episode 9 of Andor somehow makes an Imperial prison sentence seem even worse. Hi y'all, Snarky J Cosplay here. Andor is officially almost over, having released episode 9 of its 12-episode run on Disney Plus today. This is another really solid episode, one that stresses the nightmare that is space fascism, and moves forward in weaving together all these loose threads that we've had since the very beginning. I'm giving this episode a solid 8 out of 10. While it's a little less exciting and definitely less anxiety-inducing than last week's, it's not without its intrigue, and it definitely does a lot more in terms of world building and storytelling than some of the past episodes have. Episode 9 does a great job of bringing new ideas to the table and expertly helps the viewers feel the desperation of everybody currently under the Empire's fist. Like I said, I rate this episode a solid 8 out of 10, and that's all I can really say without spoiling it. So from this point on, there will be spoilers for episode 9 of Andor. You've been warned. This episode focuses on 3 main storylines. One is Dedra Meero and her ISB interrogation tactics, another is Mon Mothma still trying to get her hands on her family fortune, and the most important one is our good friend Cassian Andor, who is still very much imprisoned by the Empire. This is a real no-frills episode. There's no aliens, there's no stormtroopers, there's no Easter eggs really to be mentioned here, but there is a lot of great storytelling and a lot of stuff I want to dive into. I'm already expecting a huge prison break in the next couple of episodes. Why? Well, when we see Cassian in this episode, he actually seems pretty well adjusted to prison life. And one of the most important things we see him doing is picking up the slack for Olaf, the old man in their group who is not only dealing with a messed up hand, but is also just suffering with the fact that he's like 1,000 years old. Great news is the guy only has 41 shifts left, so he's almost out. You know, from the very beginning, I knew that this guy was gonna be a problem. The old guys are always a problem in shows, in movies. It's like one of the oldest tropes. It's kind of like when you see a dog in a horror movie, you definitely know it's gonna end up murdered. The old men are always a problem. No offense to old men anywhere. For a minute there, it seems like Cassian's actually cozy in his little worker bee prison life. But when he goes to the bathroom, we see that he's actually got this pipe that he's been sawing at, presumably to start some sort of escape plan. And when he comes back from said bathroom break, he's actually trying to convince another inmate to help him out. The planning doesn't get very far, and a little while after in this episode, something big happens, though Cassian and the other prisoners don't know what it is. At one point while they're in a holding pattern, the power actually gets cut, and they're hearing of something big going on level 2. Around bedtime, Cassian is asking his floor manager Kino, who is played by Andy Serkis. Can I just say, I love Andy Serkis. He's so good in this show. Anyways, he's asking him information about how many guards are on each floor. Kino is super resistant, and even though Cassian tells him nobody is listening, which happens to be the title of this episode, Kino refuses. You can tell that he's not exactly loyal to the Empire, but he's definitely the kind of guy that knows if he keeps his head down long enough and just does what they ask of him, he can go home. So he just wants to do his job. He's not interested in an escape plan. The next day, we get another hint at what it is that happened on level 2. It turns out the entire level, a group of about 100 men, got murdered, fried to death by those electrified floors. As the floor manager here, Kino seems pretty distressed by this. He seems desperate to stop any chatter about this, definitely for fear of him being next. It's on this day that we see the guys in Cassian's group really working to pick up the slack left by the group's abuelo Olaf. He's confused, his hand is all messed up, he's shaky as all hell, and he actually faints right there on the floor while the group tries to cover him. Cassian eventually notifies Kino that Olaf needs a doctor. However, our medtech says that he's not there to help anyone. He can't. He says that Olaf has had a massive stroke. He effectively euthanizes Olaf, and instead of being horrified by what he's just had to do, he says that Olaf is actually lucky, and he also tells Kino to keep his men in line. At this point, Kino is desperate to know, and his curiosity is piqued, so he asks the medtech what the heck happened on level 2. Of course, not in those exact words. The doctor explains that one of the men released from level 4 was actually recycled and put back to work on level 2. And when word of that got out, the men on that floor lost it. They basically tried to form a mutiny, tried to rebel against the guards on that floor, and they all paid for that with their lives. Now, what does this mean exactly? Well, it means that those shift counters that are continuously going down don't mean anything. It means that when your shift is up on this floor and you think it's your time to go home, guess what, buddy? You're getting recycled and put to work on another floor. That means none of these people are prisoners working off sentences anymore. They are literally enslaved by the Empire. Cassian repeats that question again. How many guards are on each floor? And it's this last time that Kino tells him no more than 12. And we now know that Kino, the floor manager who just wanted to do his job, is very much sure that the Empire is not gonna let him out, so he might as well rebel against them with Cassian. Which means that we're probably gonna see a really cool Con Air type prison break soon. On the other side of the coin, we've got Dedra Meero. This episode actually opens with her interrogation of Bix Caleen on Ferrix. Dedra reveals that Bix's friend Salman Pack actually got brought in immediately after Bix made that call to Luthen on the radio. It turns out that Pack's been paid to keep that radio running, and it was gifted to him by a separatist woman he met years ago. Bix, of course, doesn't want to sell Cassian out, and Dedra threatens her with the line, "The very worst thing you can do right now is bore me." That line honestly gave me chills. Eventually, Dedra gets tired and hands Bix over to a Dr. Gorst, who literally uses the screams of a race massacred by the Empire to torture other people. Not only do they massacre and torture people, but they use the screams of the massacred to torture the imprisoned. Now I'm kind of wondering if anybody used Han Solo's screams to torture people. Just a thought. They've already used this device on Salman Pack, who is destined to be hanged, and they eventually use it on Bix Caleen as well. Despite the fact that it works and they get whatever information they want out of her, they actually keep her in custody because she's the only person who can identify Axis, who we know is Luthen. We know for sure that Bix sang like a canary because the next ISB meeting we see Dedra at, she says that she knows every single piece of stolen Imperial equipment that has passed through Ferrix, and she's also drawing connections between Cassian Andor and the rebel activity that happened on Aldhani. Dedra actually has a newly devoted fan. We come to learn that Cyril Karn, or Karn, got a promotion at his new job after Dedra sort of questioned him in last week's episode, and apparently, get this, he's been posted up outside the ISB office hoping that she'll walk by just so he can talk to her. He seems like he's sort of simping for Dedra now. He tells her that she's the reason why he knows life is worth living now because she believes in justice. She responds to this by literally threatening to have him arrested and storming off. I would too. It's after this that we hear of a rebel pilot who's been detained kind of by accident, but they found him with some stolen Imperial tech. This guy turns out to be part of Anto Krieger's group. If that name sounds familiar, it's because that's the guy that Luthen wanted to meet with Saw Gerrera in last week's episode. Through further interrogation with, you guessed it, Dr. Gorst's scream machine, they've learned of a planned raid on Spellhouse, and now they really don't need the rebel pilot for anything anymore. But they can't release him, and if they kill him, they'll effectively arouse suspicion from the rebels. So instead, they decide to stage an accident that will cost him his life. That's smart. It's worked in real life. And of course, on the Mon Mothma fundraising front, things seem to be a little unsteady. She is still actively trying to fight Imperial overreach politically, and it seems like her opinions at the Senate are, surprise, surprise, pretty unpopular. When she's on her way home, her driver notifies her that her cousin has arrived. And when she gets home, we find out that that cousin is none other than Vel. This, of course, explains why Cinta said the whole thing about a rich girl hiding from her family, and it also disproves my theory that she was Luthen's daughter. Her family has apparently been looking for her, but she says the rebellion comes first. And I think that this is super honorable of her, because it's a lot lot easier for the rich in this galaxy to sort of turn the other cheek and let the Empire do whatever they want, but Vel has literally abandoned a life of riches and comfort in order to serve this rebellion and make real change, and I think that that makes her easily one of the most compelling Star Wars characters to date. Now, at some point, Mon Mothma, her husband Perrin, and her daughter Lita all sit down to have lunch with Vel. Perrin reveals two things here. One is that he's kind of an a-hole, which we knew already, but in this episode he continuously hassles Vel about why she's not married yet, and the audience already knows that Vel's got a little something going on with Cinta, so I don't think we're gonna be hearing wedding bells with her and a Chandrillan man anytime soon. The other thing we learned from Perrin in this episode is that he's apparently told his own daughter that Tay Kolma is an old boyfriend of Mon Mothma, which is probably why said daughter seems so suspicious every time Tay shows up. Later on, Mon meets with Tay Kolma again. They're trying to find ways to get their hands on Mon Mothma's cash and move some papers around so it doesn't just seem like 400,000 Imperial credits have disappeared. He says they're gonna need the help of a banker, and he suggests somebody by the name of Davo Skulden and says he's already spoken to him and that the guy wants to meet with Mon Mothma in her own home. We haven't heard this name before, but Mon Mothma seems completely appalled and calls the guy a wealthy thug. But we already know that the rebellion has got to get its hands a little bit dirty in order to succeed. I think the same goes for Mon Mothma, so I think she's definitely gonna be working with this Davo Skulden guy regardless of the fact that he's a thug. That's pretty much everything that happens in this episode. Unfortunately, I don't have any fun Easter eggs to give, but we already know that this is not your Easter egg, really cool reference show. This is a political sort of wartime type drama. It's not meant to be a hunt for cute little references to the now not canon extended universe. I think regardless of any lack of Easter eggs, this episode succeeds on so many levels. Though it's not action-packed, it definitely wasn't slow, and what I love about this episode specifically is that it shows us so many different angles of the Empire's fascist cruelty, and it definitely helps us build justification for the rebellion that is building. This, of course, all makes for super compelling character development, more than we saw in anything like Kenobi or the Book of Boba Fett. That's all from me. I've been Snarky J. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on episode 9 of Andor in the comments below.